Well, good afternoon. Old Jack here. So, training to failure. Yes? No? Well, there are a lot of notable coaches out there, athletic trainers and the like, who seem to have this ongoing debate as to whether or not it's more advantageous to train to failure or not to train to failure. I have to wonder though, are we really debating on whether or not to train to failure, or are we debating about what the definition of failure is? So just to bring up a few of these guys, Matt Schifferle, for example, of the Red Delta Project, he talks about something called progressive momentum, or the backfill strategy. And you can check out Matt's videos on Red Delta Project, and he kind of plays around with, well, what really is failure? Define that, and we can decide whether or not to do that. Jeff Cavaliere with Athlete X, he definitely advocates training to failure. However, you have to look at the parameters as to what he means by failure. He talks about changes in tempo, changes in form, and various other things that would indicate to him that a person has indeed trained to failure. So, who's right? Well, it depends again on those definitions. Matt Fury, another old timer like myself, he quotes Bill Pearl, who was 4 times Mr. Universe, and Bill Pearl said that if you train to failure, you leave the gym a failure. So he had his success by leaving one in the tank all the time. So all these guys do make sense. They're all really well trained. They're notable. They know what they're talking about. What do? Well, I advocate defining for yourself what training to failure is. So for me, training to failure really means 2 things. One, which is the most important thing to me, has my form deteriorated? If I'm doing whatever exercise, if I'm doing pull-ups to the point where I got a good tempo going and I get to the place where I have to do all kinds of acrobatics just to get my chin over the bar, I think anything at that point on is worthless. I'm not doing it right. I'm not using good form. So then I can't count it as a rep. Also, going back to tempo, if I'm moving along at a good pace and then all of a sudden I have to stop and hang there and rest a couple of seconds before I can try to get another one over the bar, I've already trained to failure. I've met failure on that set of exercises. Now, there's room for that kind of thing. There are strategies in which you rest for a few minutes or a few seconds and just get right back onto the exercise to try to progress that way. And I'm not talking about that right now. I'm just talking about defining failure. The way I'll define that then is by either my deterioration in form or I have to stop and rest. Then I'm done. Even when I do sprints, my first one is about 70%. I get myself really greased up to do the rest of them. The rest of them will be at about 85%, 90% maybe. Then I get to the point where if I feel I'm burnt out, to where my last rep or my next sprint is going to be more like a fast run and it's not going to meet my definition of a sprint at all, I've hit failure. I'm done. Time to cut the exercise out. So using that definition of failure, my definition for me, yes, I do train to failure. But I'm also careful not to train to the point where I'm overtraining. And when I'm overtraining, I'm getting diminishing returns, and I may even cause overuse injuries, or worse yet, acute injuries. And we've all seen those kind of videos. They're pretty ugly when you get an acute injury and something snaps. So my exception really would be if you're doing an event or you're in your game and you're trying to win something. If I'm actually in a race, I'm in a lifting competition, I'm doing a SEAL Fit 20 times challenge, well then of course you're going to put it all out on the table and you're going to give it all. But to say that you have to give it all 100% and train your body to death each and every time you work out, I think you may be setting yourself up for failure. And me being 60 years old, if you have a guy my age or in the ballpark of my age, that danger is even worse. So I do advocate training for failure. Define for you what failure is. Train properly progress, stay safe, don't get hurt, and hang tough. Old Jack out. Have a great week.